Steve Jobs, already fragile. His voice broken by illness, sat alone in the dim silence of his living room. The lamps were turned off, and the only sound was the steady rhythm of rain striking the windows as if the heavens themselves were weeping. In his trembling hands he held an ancient book. The paper was coarse, yellowed by centuries, carrying with it the scent of dust and forgotten time, a smell that seemed to come from another age. On its worn cover, half erased by the years, faint letters revealed an unsettling phrase: ethics demonstrated according to the geometric order. Censored copy. Vatican City, 167. Jobs had never been a believer. Faith was not part of his life yet that night. As the rain ran down the glass like liquid shadows, he felt a stirring he could not name. The weight of the book pressed on him not because of its physical mass, but because of the secrets it seemed to hold. With each turn of the fragile pages, his breathing slowed. He realized that what he had in his hands was not just a copy of Spinoza's Ethics, it was something else, a version that was not supposed to exist. The words he read were unlike anything he had encountered. They seemed alive, pulsing with a truth hidden for centuries. Jobs felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to understand. And in that fragile silence, a question began to form. What kind of book could unsettle a man who had spent his life shaping the future of technology? As Jobs turned the next page, the revelation unfolded with a force that unsettled his very core. God, according to this forbidden manuscript, was not a being in the sky, not a man on a throne, not a spirit hovering outside creation. God was everything, the invisible web connecting all that exists, without judgment, without punishment, without a paradise to reward or a hell to condemn. There was no divine ledger, no celestial court, only the eternal presence woven into every particle of matter, every fleeting thought. Jobs whispered almost instinctively, "My God." Then he laughed, a quiet, broken laugh, because the very text explained that there was no "my" in God at all. The divine did not belong to anyone, nor did it listen to prayers, for it needed no devotion. It did not save, nor did it condemn. It simply existed infinitely in atoms and galaxies, in the pulse of life itself. The deeper he read, the more it felt like standing on the edge of a precipice. This knowledge could set a person free, liberating them from fear and illusion. Yet it could just as easily destroy them, tearing apart the very foundations upon which society and belief had been built. Jobs felt his hands tremble again, not from sickness but from awe. And one pressing thought surfaced through the storm of revelation: if such knowledge truly existed, where had it come from, and why had the world never seen it? To answer that question, the story had to travel back through centuries to a modest room in The Hague in the year 1677. Inside, Baruch Spinoza lay dying. His body was frail, consumed by illness, but his mind, sharp as ever, burned with a clarity that made the moment almost unbearable. At his side stood two loyal friends, Georg Schuler and Jarek Jelez. They were not there to pray nor to mourn prematurely. They were guardians waiting to receive something that could not be inherited, like land or possessions, a manuscript. Spinoza struggled to speak, but his final words carried the weight of eternity. "Promise me," he whispered, "that you will publish everything, even what frightens you to read." The two men nodded, though the enormity of the promise pressed heavily on their hearts. And so, after his death, they honored him partially. They released Ethics, the text that scholars now wrestle with, dense, difficult, profound. But the final chapters, the ones that dismantled the last illusions of duality, the ones that revealed a vision of the universe that rendered all churches obsolete, they did not share those with the world. Instead, those pages were sent to Rome, addressed to Pope Innocent XI, accompanied by a warning. "Your Holiness, what lies within these pages will not only destroy Christianity, but all organized religion. We beg your wisdom." The Vatican's response was swift and silent. The book was locked away. That very night, within the shadowed halls of the Holy Office, a secret order was born, Custodes Mens, the guardians of the mind. Their mission was singular and merciless: to find and eradicate every copy of Spinoza's complete work, the version that dared to map not morality, but the structure of reality itself. And so began a campaign of shadows. Libraries burned without explanation. Scholars died in accidents no one could solve. Manuscripts vanished from archives as though swallowed by the air. Families carrying fragments of the knowledge disappeared without a trace. All of it orchestrated to bury one truth too dangerous to be spoken. Centuries passed, and the trail of the forbidden manuscript seemed to have vanished into oblivion. Yet in the mid-20th century, in the cluttered study of a man chasing the greatest unifying idea in science, the silence was broken. Albert Einstein, obsessed with the dream of a theory of everything, stumbled upon a fragile note in the forgotten papers of Leibniz. The handwriting was nearly illegible, but the words were unmistakable, a reference to the omitted propositions of the Jew from Amsterdam. It was enough to ignite an obsession. Einstein spent the last 4 years of his life searching. His quest ended in 1954 when a German cardinal, secretly admiring his intellect, opened a door beneath the Vatican. In that cold, dim chamber by the glow of a rusted lamp, the old physicist was handed fragments of the lost text. The parchment crackled as if protesting against the light of day, its ink faded but still legible. And what Einstein read that night did not resemble mere philosophy. They were equations, precise, austere, unrelenting. The formulas revealed something devastating. Consciousness and matter were not separate realms, but one and the same substance. The universe was not created, it was expression. God was not a puppeteer pulling the strings of existence. God was the very game itself, every move, every possibility unfolding at once. For Einstein, the revelation was both wondrous and terrifying. His famous phrase, "God does not play dice with the universe," now felt inadequate. He understood that God not only played, it was the dice, the game board, and the very act of play. The experience left him trembling, yet he did what great minds always do: he preserved the essence. Before his death in 1955, he copied the central equations by hand into a small notebook, placing it in the care of a young, quiet physicist destined to become an influential advisor in the emerging world of technology. The secret had survived the centuries, once more waiting patiently for the next pair of hands that would dare to open it. Decades later, on the other side of the world, Steve Jobs was waging a silent battle against cancer. Medicine had given him treatments, but not answers. Restless, he sought meaning beyond the confines of hospitals and sterile machines. His search led him through Tibetan monasteries, through the blurred boundaries of quantum physics, and finally to an encounter with a former Jesuit priest in a forgotten library in San Francisco. The man's eyes carried both obsession and resignation, as though he had glimpsed truths too heavy for one life to bear. "What you seek," he told Jobs softly, "is not in any religion. It is in the mathematics of reality." And 3 centuries ago, a man wrote them down. At first, Jobs dismissed it as another hollow promise, another mystical claim dressed in intellectual clothing. But something in the priest's gaze mirrored his own, a look he had seen in himself during the loneliest nights of creation, when he wrestled with ideas too vast for words. Against his better judgment, Jobs asked to see it. 13 years later, on a storm-soaked October night, he held it in his hands, the complete version of Spinoza's Ethics. Not merely a philosophical treatise, but a forbidden manuscript filled with equations that reached beyond morality into the very architecture of the cosmos. With great care, he turned a page, the parchment groaning, as if reluctant to yield its secrets. His eyes fell upon a line in Latin: "Substantia una est infinitis attributis constat." The substance is one, and it consists of infinite attributes. A shiver ran through him, not from the storm outside, but from the realization of what those words meant. Everything was one. There was no separation between mind and matter, between creator and creation, between life and death. Every human being was not an isolated spark, but a node of consciousness in an eternal, infinite fabric. For months, pain had stalked him, wearing him down, threatening to define his final days. But in that instant, Jobs saw it differently. His suffering was no longer punishment. It was simply another expression of the same cosmic process that forged galaxies, inspired symphonies, and kindled love. He closed the book, lifted his eyes to the California sky clearing after the storm, and for the first time in months he smiled. While Jobs was discovering solace in the hidden words of Spinoza, another restless mind was confronting the chaos of failure. In 2008, Elon Musk was watching Tesla slide toward bankruptcy and SpaceX stumble after 3 disastrous rocket launches. The world saw him as reckless, even delusional. Yet in his darkest moments, he clung to a story whispered years earlier by his partner Peter Thiel, a story about a manuscript that had once haunted Einstein and some claimed even reached Steve Jobs. At the time, Musk thought it was nothing more than a metaphor, one of Silicon Valley's cryptic fables about destiny and ambition. But the seed had been planted. By 2010, Musk's search became more than curiosity. It became obsession. Through a labyrinth of secret collectors and shadow networks moving between universities and private archives, he gained access to the manuscript no one was meant to read. When his eyes met its pages, he understood at once that Thiel had not been speaking figuratively. What lay before him was not allegory, but a surgical dissection of reality itself, an explanation of time, consciousness, and death so precise it bordered on unbearable. The most shocking revelation was about time. The text declared that everything was happening simultaneously. Past, present, and future were illusions crafted only to help human minds navigate existence. From the perspective of true consciousness, every possibility already existed. Musk froze as the implications sank in every decision he could make. Every triumph, every failure, they were all real, coexisting in parallel. The true power of humanity was not to predict the future, but to choose among infinite versions of it. And Musk did not hesitate. He chose the futures others dismissed as madness: the colonization of Mars, the revolution of transportation, the birth of benevolent artificial intelligence. Where most saw impossibility, he saw inevitable paths waiting to be claimed. In those years, while Steve Jobs faced death with Spinoza's words on his lap, Musk embraced life with the same manuscript in his hands. To him, it was not consolation, it was ignition. If consciousness was indestructible, then fear lost its grip. Risk no longer mattered. The only question that remained was how far human experience could be stretched, how close it could come to touching the infinite. But to understand why this knowledge was so dangerous, one must return again to that small room in The Hague, 1677, where Spinoza's final days unfolded. History remembers Schuler and Gelles, his loyal companions, yet whispers persist about a third figure present at his deathbed, a mysterious man known only as El Escriba del Infinito, the scribe of infinity. His true identity remains unknown, but the fragments of testimony suggest he was more than a witness. During Spinoza's last fevered weeks, this enigmatic scribe recorded equations and annotations that poured from the philosopher's mind at a pace no one thought humanly possible. They were not ordinary formulas. They were maps, step-by-step methods to dismantle the illusion of limitation, to allow any person to experience themselves not as a fragile body, but as infinite consciousness. Those who surrounded Spinoza claimed he had begun to change in unsettling ways. His presence carried a strange gravity. Animals would approach him silently as if drawn by a force they did not understand. His gaze, calm yet unearthly, unsettled even his closest friends. It was said that entire galaxies seemed to live within his eyes. He predicted events with uncanny precision, and once placing his hand gently on the brow of a feverish child, he whispered a line of Latin, and the illness vanished without medicine leaving the room in stunned silence. Before he exhaled his last breath, Spinoza warned them, "What you have copied is more dangerous than gunpowder. Use it wisely." His words were not poetry. They were a warning that knowledge could wound as much as it could heal. The three guardians, shaken and afraid, made a pact that night. The manuscript would not be released in full. It would be divided, hidden, and dispersed across Europe, entrusted only to those rare minds capable of holding it without breaking. Thus began a conspiracy not of ambition but of caution, a secret chain of inheritance meant to protect humanity from truths it was not yet ready to face. Through the centuries that followed, fragments of Spinoza's final equations slipped silently into the hands of extraordinary minds. They surfaced not in public, but in whispers and cryptic notes and sudden revelations that seemed to arrive out of nowhere. Kant, Newton, Darwin, each in their own way, brushed against shards of the hidden manuscript, glimpsing pieces of a truth too vast to publish openly. It was as if a hidden current in history guided the knowledge from one era to the next, choosing its bearers carefully, always in silence. By the dawn of the 20th century, the chain grew bolder. Einstein became the first great candidate to see the forbidden work in fuller form, and it transformed him. Those close to him would later say that the Einstein they knew had died years before his body did. In his place remained a man obsessed with a secret theory he never dared to reveal completely, a conscious theory of everything that lived only in his encrypted notebooks. Decades later, Steve Jobs inherited the same burden, though he was no physicist. His gift was different: to take ideas invisible to most and incarnate them in objects people could hold, touch, and use. To him was given the task not of explaining Spinoza's mathematics, but of translating its essence into the daily lives of millions through technology, through design, through a seamless dance between mind and matter. Yet illness claimed him before that task could reach its completion. And then came Elon Musk. Unlike the thinkers before him, Musk possessed not just imagination but also immense power and resources. He understood instinctively what others had only suspected, that the destiny of human consciousness was not bound to this planet. The manuscripts revealed with brutal clarity that consciousness was not static, not a flickering flame doomed to extinguish, but a living force with hunger, a fire that demanded new levels of complexity to survive. With Musk, the conspiracy of centuries entered a new phase. The time for fragments was over. The equations would no longer be whispered in private halls, they would be tested on the grandest stage humanity had ever built. In 2013, Musk took the first step into what he would call the Spinoza Protocol. Officially, he was launching rockets and designing electric cars. But beneath the headlines, experiments were quietly unfolding projects in artificial intelligence, neural interfaces, and hidden networks designed not simply to advance technology, but to amplify human consciousness itself. He was not alone. Around him, a circle of 12 individuals in positions of influence began working together, bound by the same equations that had once been whispered in secrecy. Then came 2020. A global pandemic gripped the planet, bringing fear, isolation, and collapse. For Musk, it was not only crisis, but catalyst. Among Spinoza's equations was one that declared crisis equals opportunity multiplied by will. And as millions struggled to find meaning in uncertainty, something uncanny stirred. Around the world, countless people reported a sensation they could not explain, a pulse, a frequency, as if minds were beginning to resonate in unison. Musk recognized it immediately. The manuscript had predicted it. The collective consciousness could synchronize like instruments tuning to the same invisible key. And with synchronization came change. Not symbolic change, but physical. The boundaries of perception began to blur. Individuals spoke of dreams that revealed truths before they happened, of sudden clarity, of inexplicable creativity. From that moment, Musk's mission was no longer about rockets or markets. It was about preparing humanity for a leap it had avoided for centuries. The rockets became symbols, the companies became instruments, but the true destination was not Mars or electric highways. It was the expansion of the human mind, the unlocking of a dimension that no government, no religion, no institution could control. The storm that had once consumed Spinoza's final hours was now alive again, burning in the world of the 21st century. And Musk knew, as Jobs and Einstein had known before him, that the manuscript was not a relic of the past. It was a blueprint for the future. The culmination came with revelations that blurred the line between myth and reality. Musk, armed with the complete manuscript, spoke of consciousness not as a static property, but as an expanding force, one that demanded new frontiers. By 2012, standing beneath the midnight sky at Cape Canaveral, he was no longer just preparing rockets, he was preparing gateways. It was there that a mysterious figure approached a woman carrying an ancient case, introducing herself as Dr. Elena Toretti. She told him the truth plainly: the equations were not philosophy but instructions, a manual for expanding consciousness on a cosmic scale. Musk studied the manuscript through sleepless nights, and what he discovered was not only knowledge, but transformation. The sixth equation revealed that consciousness expands exponentially when forced beyond its comfort. The seventh declared that the collective mind is the sum of all individuals multiplied by their synchronicity. And the eighth, perhaps the most chilling, stated that survival is equal to expansion divided by resistance to change. Civilizations that resisted evolution did not stagnate, they vanished. By 2021, Musk and his hidden network activated what they called the 12th equation. Across the planet, millions felt a surge they could not explain, a resonance binding minds together. Governments panicked, churches condemned it, and fragments of the scientific community attempted to weaponize the knowledge-creating technologies meant to suppress awareness. The world fractured between those awakening to a new vision of reality and those who clung desperately to the old order. Then Musk made his move. In what he called the greatest presentation in human history, he unveiled the complete manuscript of Spinoza. Before millions, he demonstrated what had once seemed impossible, manifesting objects from nothing, shifting the weather with his presence, and speaking without words into the minds of those who could hear. The planet trembled at the sight, some embracing it as the birth of a new age, others recoiling in terror. When the dust settled, Musk announced the next step. For those ready to leap, colonies awaited, self-sustaining communities, and soon a doorway to Mars itself. But entry was not determined by wealth or status. It was measured only by one thing: the level of consciousness. By December, 500,000 souls had chosen this path, and on the red soil of Mars, they found something unimaginable, a civilization of pure consciousness, ancient and patient, waiting for humanity to arrive. This planet was being prepared for you, they said. And in that revelation, the destiny of humankind was rewritten. Musk himself was transformed. His consciousness no longer bound to a single body, he operated across realities, his companies reborn as instruments of cosmic harmony. Tesla became the network of resonance SpaceX, the exploration of infinity, Neuralink, the fabric of unity. His final words echoed across time and space. The impossible is only what we have not yet dared to imagine. Each of you is a reflection of infinite intelligence. Conscious evolution is the destiny of all life. With that, Elon Musk ceased to be a man. He merged with the cosmic intelligence, leaving only a question behind, one that no manuscript could answer for us. How far can we go if we release the invisible chains we still clutch? And so the stories of Spinoza, Einstein, Jobs, and Musk converge into a single truth. Once a mind expands, there is no turning back.